Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is August the 28th in the year of our Lord, 2023. The first round of the Republican primary debates are in, and like most Americans, we at Soluble here was definitely tuned in, as we informed you that we would be before the debates. Now the first round is in, and first and foremost, we're going to unequivocally state here at Soluble, even though we are firmly entrenched in the Democratic encampment, we're going to firmly state here at Soluble that if there's any Republican primary candidate that can serve America, that is fit to serve, and is ready to lead on day one, firmly being entrenched in the Democratic corner, we're going to state that that candidate that we saw on this past Wednesday was Asa Hutchinson, Governor Asa Hutchinson out of Kansas. He was, in the opinion of us here at Soluble, by far and away the best man for the job when it comes to conservative politics, leading and guiding America for the next 4 years. Other than that, it was really the same old, watered down. Now, the former president, he was a no-show, which he stated before the primary debates that he would be. He was a no-show, so we don't know, if we got MAGA revamped, MAGA new and improved. But by all accounts, just stepping out there on a whimsical guess, we have to figure it's the same old, because the former president did not come on to give us anything new. And as we stated before, on previous casts, the president is, on the campaign trail, letting those at his rallies know, and the American people know that they're coming after us. He's just in the way, or they're coming after him because he won't let them get to us. And as of now, we're still in the dark. We don't know who they are because the former president refuses to come on and explain. So when it comes to the front runner, who is the former president, Donald J. Trump, by all poll indicators, he is the front runner. So we know that we have nothing to look forward to new and or improved, revamped, refurbished, or anything when it comes to MAGA. So we've seen that movie before. As far as the other 7 to 8 candidates, as I said, by far and away, we think that Governor Hutchinson of Arkansas would be the best man to lead conservative politics, because it was the same old. When it comes to the environment, drill, baby, drill. When it comes to crime, lock them up. What? There's nothing new here. There's nothing new to see. Now, the moderator asked a question. And we're not sure here at Soluble where the question came from. But the moderator asked a question as far as, do any of the candidates think that climate change is being caused by human activity? And let me see by a show of hands. And there was nothing, alarmingly. And this is to the American voter. You have to be paying attention here. I mean, we have a storm brewing out in the Gulf now. We just had California last week. We just had Maui right there in front of California, with wildfires, wind gusts. And so, it's really shocking that when it comes to climate change, by a show of hands, simply by a show of hands, who thinks it's being caused, by human activity? That's really like a softball type approach when it comes to climate change, because, scientific facts have established that it's the carbon emissions that are going up into the atmosphere that is causing the planet to heat up because of fossil fuel usage. And, so a real softball approach by a simple show of hands, and we could get nothing. So, there's nothing that, we can, take from these past debates to ensure anything other than the fact that Governor Hutchinson of Arkansas will be the best candidate for conservative politics leading America by everything that we saw. This was like, something out of Amateur Night at the Apollo, presidential wannabes, and when the moderator would ring the bell, they want to talk right through the bell, and use up other candidates' time. And we understand now why at Amateur Night at the Apollo, why the clown comes out, shaking the Pillow Soft bowling club or whatever it is that he's waving at the contestants on Amateur Night. And we definitely needed that, because the moderator's bell just wasn't doing it. Now, after being asked for a show of hands, we noticed that Governor DeSantis here of Florida was the first one to speak up, to say, we could take on this issue. We don't have to do like little children with show of hands. It's the Biden policies that are crippling. Now think about that. And here's what the Republicans want to have it both ways, because they think that, for one, they know they have voters firmly entrenched in their camp, but they're looking to trick Democrats into switching. To seeing how many Democrats and independents that they can get to cross over. That's what the election is hinging upon. A lack of showing as far as Democratic voters. No enthusiasm at the polls, and hoping that some will cross over along with independents. Now, a prime example of where you see the Republican politicians want to have it both ways, and it's really kind of scary because it's ignorant. It shows almost like a, what is the word I'm looking for here? Just a lack of knowledge, just like total inexperience. Not really realizing that, you're putting egg on your face with the statements that you make. And these people are wanting to be leaders of the free world. They're contending to be leaders of the free world, president of the United States. Now, to make my point, you have Governor DeSantis. He's the first one to speak up, in reference to, we don't need to be treated like children and raising our hands. And, what we need to do is deal with the crippling Biden policies. Now, when Hurricane Ian came down, almost a year ago, come the end of September, where was the governor? Following right behind the president as he walked around Fort Myers and other places where the storm came ashore, the destruction of Hurricane Ian. He was right there, needing money for the state, ponying up, cozying up. But now, when he's asked to show his hands, if he thinks that climate change is caused by human activity, it's the Biden policy. You can't have it both ways. If it's the Biden policies, then refuse the federal funds. Show us what you got here in Florida. If the federal government is in the way, at least show us what you got here at the state level. But no, this is another prime example of Republican politicians wanting to have it both ways. Wanting to have it both ways. 1 minute, there's no storms brewing or nothing. Well, I take that back, because currently we have Tropical Storm Idalia out in the Gulf. And guess where it's churning, folks? Towards the great state of Florida. Now, back to my point. As I said, now it's the Biden crippling policies that we don't need. But when the storm hits, and, they're becoming more frequent, they're more intense. When the storm hits, he's right there, falling behind the president like he's Hunter. Looks like a father and son type photo op here. Because, let's face it, the president is up in age. But there he is, following in lockstep behind it, cozying up, smoothing up now when the storm hits. But once the skies clear, it's the Biden policies. Democrats, there's no way we can let them have this both ways and win. You have to see where, the truth becomes a lie, or vice versa. And as I said, there's nothing new here. There's nothing new to see, ladies and gentlemen, based off the first debate. And you would think, okay, with crime, you don't hear the Republican candidates when it comes to crime offer no solutions to crime, no preventative solutions, no deterrence to crime, nothing. And you know, leading experts, scholars, think tanks, a panel of experts have been chaired, and they've all come to the same conclusion that we can't arrest our way out of a problem when it comes to mental health, drug use, and just rampant crime spiraling out of control. We can all agree that crime, is a problem. It's on the rise in some areas, and in some areas it's stable. It's steady. It hasn't really increased or decreased. But at the end of the day, we can all come to the conclusion that we need to be effective when it comes to crime. But we're not prepared here at Soluble to say that the only effective means to dealing with crime is to lock people up. But yet and still, regardless of what the experts are saying, and the leading indicators are pointing, the direction that the leading indicators are pointing, the Republicans are still going the opposite way. Nothing for crime. Nothing to deter it. No solutions other than mass incarceration. And Democratic voters, we know what that looks like. And we're not prepared to say that as Democrats, we disagree. But unlike the Republicans, we as Democrats, we think there's more than a one-step solution here, which is simply just to lock people up. We think that there are things that can deter. Here in a great city that we reside in now, they're looking at reading scores, reading levels. And if a child is not able to read by a certain time, that could lead them into more than likely a life of crime. But do you hear the Republicans say anything about, reading skills, enhancing reading skills, or doing anything, similar to this to deter crime, to prevent crime from happening down the line? No. So this primary has really, hasn't shown us anything new and refreshing that would make me as a Democrat sit up and take notice, other than the fact that Governor Hutchinson is, the man to run against Joseph R. Biden. And who knows, more Republicans might show up and give the president a serious run for his money. But these ideals, this drill, baby drill, lock them up, these have been tried. They've been tried and failed. Trickle down economics, regulations is, it's a job killer. It's a wet blanket. We're gonna break all this down, leading into the election of 2024. I can't say when, and exactly what date, but we're gonna break everything down as we've said. We're just touching on the issues for now, but we're gonna break them down issue by issue. Prescription drugs, the economy, foreign policy, energy policy, climate change, crime. We're going to break it all down. Women's rights, protections for women, protections for children. We're going to break it all down here at Soluble. But for now, we're urging Democrats to, continue to pay attention. We're looking to win over as many independents as we can because, as you saw it for yourselves. You saw it for yourselves. What did you see? To any of my listeners out there, what did you see that really impressed you? What did we see that was new? When it comes to the front runner, they were asked, could they support him? Could they support the former president? Even if he's under indictment. Pressure, major pressure. Why should this be? Why should there be pressure for you to not support a former president under indictment, been impeached twice, a pathological liar, and totally unfit for office? Totally unfit. He's not educated enough. He doesn't have what it takes. But yet and still, they'll rally behind him. Now, like most of you, we here at Soluble, we looked at the mugshot layout coming from the DA in Atlanta for the latest indictment that the former president and all the president's men are under. And I mean, it looks like something out of a Goodfellas movie with Paulie and Jimmy and all the other wise guys. This mugshot layout looks like something out of a gangster movie. But it's not art imitating life. It's not art imitating life. This is real live life where the former president is under indictment for trying to overturn a free and fair election. And so, we're here to solve this, but it takes two to tangle. And Republicans can't begin to tangle with Democrats unless they can come to grips with reality that the man that they put forward is no good for the Oval Office. He's no good for the country. And so right now, in the meantime, we have Republicans, planning an inquiry, doing an inquiry, probing, whether or not they should begin formal impeachment proceedings against President Biden. Now, we know there's nothing there. We, as Democrats, we know there's nothing there. This is all just to try to tear the president down as far as weakening his chances of getting a second term. And it's sad that the level of brainwashing that goes on, in the Republican Party, but we can't even say it's that. I mean, we're 247 years in, as I've stated here at Soluble, as far as a nation. And we can't get past the politics of race. And so here we are. We had the first African-American president in United States history. And then we had the first openly racist president of the United States shortly thereafter. And, this is where the pushback began after former President Obama. Now, you would think that Caucasian America, or that part of Caucasian America who was resentful of the first African-American president in the United States history, would push back with a smart president, a diplomatic president, a president who was able to, work across the aisles and make America strong. But sadly, the former president was able to come in to office and put forth a MAGA agenda because he's just racist enough to get the job done. And it's a sad time in America now, where you have the first African-American president, and then America comes back and pushes back afterwards with the most openly racist president in American history. And it's gotten us nowhere as a country. Nowhere. Now, it's not a two-tier system. This is what's being said. Now, if we go back from then to now to see how we got here, once the former president realized that he could stand up in the middle of Fifth Avenue, numbers wouldn't change. We were in trouble then. The Republicans had to have seen this. So how can we have a two-tier system where Hillary's not being prosecuted? Keep in mind, there's a Republican FBI director and a Republican head of the Department of Justice. So how can we have a two-tier system? Hillary's not being prosecuted, but the former president is. The former President Trump is. And this is what it's led to. Once the president felt like his poll numbers wouldn't change regardless of what he did, that's what made him get bold and do the things that he did. The president had an open phone call, regardless of who was listening, didn't care, and just called, the Secretary of State of Georgia Secretary of Elections Raffensperger and told him how many votes he needed. Who does this? A president who is an egomaniac, who feels like, no matter what he does, his poll numbers are not going to change. And that's what he stated. So that's why we are where we are today, where the former president, as I've said, he's dragging down the Republican Party. As Democratic voters and independents, we have to realize that he'll drag the country down also. In most cases, in the past, by all accounts, as far as we know here at Soluble, when it's been this level of corruption, this level of dysfunction, at the federal level, centered around the Oval Office, the man who was running would always step down. The person who was running would always step down and do what was best for the country, but not former President Donald John Trump. So he's not showing up at the debates. Is it the country be damned? I mean, does he not care to come on stage and make his case to the American people as to why he should lead us for the next 4 years? I mean, we've seen what MAGA looks like. And if that's all you got, then it is what it is. But for the love of country, and that's where we're at here, for the love of country, you would think that the former president would come on stage, show up at the debates, and make the case. So, Republican voters are fooled. They're swindled. The president has fundraised off of his latest mugshot, looking like something out of Angry Birds. And he's making his millions. He's raising his millions. He's found a way to, make money off of wrongdoing. And so, instead of stepping down, here he is, a leading candidate for the Republican Party in Republican political circles, and he's doubling down. He's not stepping down for the sake of the country. He's doubling down. And so, make no mistake about it. Democrats, we have to push back. And we have to push back twice as hard as the Republicans are pushing, because they're pushing the wrong agenda. They're on the wrong side of history. And if we're going to stand up for the sake of the country, if we're going to stand up for the rule of law, the democratic process, we have to push back even harder and present the facts to the American people in a way that they may not see them on the evening news, in the tabloids, in the newspapers, or wherever they get their information from. So we unequivocally stated here at Soluble that once the president realized that his poll numbers wouldn't change, when he mocked the disabled, mocked war heroes, encouraged violence at his campaigns, this all began to happen in 2016. And once the president realized that his poll numbers didn't change or wasn't going to change, he didn't quit. He got even worse. And so it's led to 4 indictments now. This is what's led to the 4 indictments, because he realized that Republican voters are going to stay in lockstep with it, because he's just racist enough to get the job done. To what? Stop the browning of America? I think not. To set so-called minorities back, 50 to 100 years? I think not. This is not possible. The world has moved on from that time. But yet, you have Republican voters clinging to hope. Futilely clinging to hope that the president could turn back the hands of time to a time where, power that was being gathered or being accumulated by so-called minorities could be checked by a racist Caucasian establishment, and we'll be able to come forward and push them back and or set them back. Those days have passed. But yet and still, as I said, you have Republican voters who think that the president is just racist enough to get the job done. And so as long as he can tell, when he's asked to denounce, hate groups, as long as he can say something like tell the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, that's good enough for him. He don't want to alienate that group support there. He don't want to alienate that. He want to keep those numbers intact. And they're good. Those numbers are good for fundraising and giving him support at the polls. And so the president is not intelligent. The former president is not intelligent enough to realize that although he have millions and millions of supporters, it's not a majority. It's not a majority. And Democrats, it's up to us to keep it that way. We would hope that in common sense prevailing, or for the sake of the country, if some of these Republican independent voters who were in his corner before January 6th insurrection will, either vote for Donald Duck, not vote at all, or, better yet, cast a ballot for Joseph R. Biden. We would hope that. But, the fact that the former president, doesn't realize that even though he has these millions of followers, it's not a majority. And majority rules in America. The lack of knowledge he has when it comes to realizing that is further evidence and proof that he's unfit for office. If he was an intelligent president, former president, he would come on the debate stage and make the case to try to win over more voters. He may have 70 million firmly entrenched in the Trump camp. But it's, as we saw in the 2020 election, it's not a majority. It's not a majority. And so here we have it, where we have Republican lawmakers up on the Hill, in Washington, D.C., whose only thought is to try to find some way to tear down Joe Biden, muddy up his name, simply because the Democratic Party, as we've stated here, is for everybody having equal opportunity at a piece of the American dream. That's what this is pretty much all about. Because you notice, if you're paying attention, where's the attack on policy? Where are the specifics? To say, the Biden's climate change policies are not working because this, that, and or the third. We don't see it. We don't see it. We see this fear-mongering propaganda at work to try to, as I said, tear down the president. Because that's all they have. They don't have a plan to lead. So why would we as Democratic voters and common sense independents not rally to this cause? Because democracy is at stake here. The future of the republic is at stake. And, to vote the former president out once more. Although, we can't predict anything now. We can't assume anything at this point, because the former president, he's just that sneakily greedy, just that low down enough to fool the electorate into thinking that, he's trying to do something good for America. But we would think that showing up at the polls once more and beating them again, once again. We're not sure about Arizona. But we would hope our fellow Arizonians will, let common sense prevail. We know that we can beat them again. And we know that Georgia's a purple state now, and we can beat them again there. But what other alternative do we have? Because if we sit on the sidelines and sit this 2024 election out, we deserve what we get. And as I said, what's new? What's going to be different? We haven't heard the former president come on the debate stage and make the case as to what's new and improved. What will be different this time around? We can't begin to reach out until we send this message once more in 2024. We have to maintain a majority. We will be doing great to win back the House. And we can do that if we would just show up, see the benefit of showing up. Now, you have two candidates here. And it's not to say that, President Biden has all the answers. This is not to say that President Biden is doing everything right. But the one thing he is doing right is he's listening. He's listening to his advisors. He's listening to financial experts and trying to turn the economy around. keep prices down. He's listening. But when it comes to these two men, one a president, one a former president, it shouldn't take a rocket scientist, to help you figure this out. Who is the best man for the job based on the work that's been put in? Based on the work that's been put in. And so, we see what's going on with this majority here. I mean, they're governing with folded arms, with crossed arms. The only way we're going to move progress forward is to keep this Democratic majority. I wouldn't be surprised if at the next debate here, the last part of September, once again, if it's doubling down on the same things that don't work. You have Vivek, Ramaswamy is pro drill, baby drill. You heard him. Nuclear energy, fossil fuels, fracking, you name it. Now, one would think that, an intelligent guy like Vivek Ramaswamy paying attention, while he's doubling down on the usage of fossil fuels, he would give us, what is going to be his intelligent and or scientific approach to dealing with climate change, while he continues to put these carbon emissions, into the atmosphere. Give us a twofold plan here. Drill, baby, drill is just one side of the coin. But now we see that we're living in a day and time now where, there's an after effect. There's an action with drill, baby, drill, and then there's a reaction that we're getting from the planet. So we need a twofold, answer. We need a twofold solution here. If drill, baby, drill is the solution, we have a problem here with storms, with flooding, with fires, with wind, with heat. So what is the answer there? While we're drilling, baby, drilling, it's nothing. It's nothing. Now, I started really paying close attention to hurricanes when I left home in Georgia in '97 and moved to the great state of Florida. I really started paying more attention to hurricanes because I had moved to a state that was closely akin to hurricanes every year. And when I moved here in '97, I never heard the term, in dealing with storms that were coming, I never heard the term rapid intensification. It's just as of late, within the last anywhere from 2 to 5 years, that we begin to hear this term now, rapid intensification, when it comes to a hurricane, where it goes from a 1 and then all of a sudden it explodes into a 3, 4. It's a 1 sitting in the Gulf. Now, in times past, when I first moved here in '97, in times past, if it was a category 1 sitting in the Gulf, we sat back and relaxed, and we kind of got comfortable. If anything, it would be no more than a 2 by the time it reached land. So it's no big deal. But now we have rapid intensification, and you have no pushback on candidate Ramaswamy, no pushback from the other candidates. So we know they're on the same page. Drill, baby, drill. Now we're gonna break it down. But just as somewhat of a hint, we drill, baby, drilling. Prices are low. But where do you live? Where do you live? Where do you shop at? Where do you stand in line to get your bottled water from when these natural disasters keep hitting? They have no answer for that. So drill, baby, drill. On one hand, you may have a job. You may have a decent paycheck, maybe. But then on the other hand, climate change is wreaking havoc. So what good is going to work on a Friday with an approaching storm? And by the time you pick up your paycheck, the storm has come through and passed, and your house is, scattered about all over the ground, just debris here and there and everywhere. What good is the paycheck? We don't have to choose either or. But this is what's going to happen under the Republicans' plan. We're going to be choosing either or. Do I want my paycheck, my decent check over here from my coal mining job, from my drill job, of fracking, nuclear, or what have you? Or do I want, a nice, comfortable house to live in, while I may be supporting the country dealing with renewable energy, more clean energy? We can do both. We can do both. And if we can't, it's on the Republicans to tell us as the American people why we can't do both. Why we can't cut back on carbon emissions and still bring home a decent paycheck and possibly have your house still standing, your community still standing and not in tatters. With everything blown away, burnt down, or flooded out. So, once again, voter beware. Because you're not going to be able to have it both ways. And once again, if we can, let us get it from the Republican candidates. Let us have them to show us how they can drill, baby, drill, and protect the environment also. Give us both. But they're counting on you, the American voter, to be shallow, to be ill-informed, to be fooled by slick and polished words. This is what they're counting on. You'll only hear it soluble, to the extreme where we push back on everything. Not that we like controversy, but there are two sides to this coin, and you're only getting one, which is the drill, baby, drill side. Oh, there's going to be money to be made. There's just going to be this cash bonanza, this cash free fall. Cash raining out of the sky from drilling, fracking, fossil fueling. This is what they're selling. This is what they're selling. But once the effects of climate change take place, whether it be in the form of wind, water, fire, there's no answer. There's no answer. You're in a bread line. You're in the water line. You don't know when your electricity's coming back on. Insurance companies are fleeing the state right now, here in the state of Florida. Insurance companies are fleeing the state. You have a home with no insurance. The storm comes, destroys your home. What's it worth now? It's uninsured. It's just a pile of rubble. What have you worked so hard for? If this is the best that the Republican Party can do, we're hold on, America, because we're in for a rough ride here. We're in for a rough ride. Now, we can speak to the current president who's in office now. He will listen. He goes out and travels across America selling the Inflation Reduction Act and other great things that he's done for the country. And he's not only talking, but he's listening. He's listening to the American people. He's taking questions. He's listening to their concerns. So it can only get better. Because, we the people have a say. The commander-in-chief is listening, which is what a good leader should do. A good leader doesn't boast and brag and, always talking about, what he can do, how he can do it better, and how he's the best at it, and how it's never been done like it's been done before he came. This is not the sign of a good leader. Someone who's always right, someone who knows everything. What kind of leader is this? One that will lead America down a path of doom and gloom if we're not careful. If we're not careful. So, it's really kind of boring because, if we had something new there to go on, we could take it and run with it. We could take it and run with it and start saying, okay, maybe we have the path here to the beginnings of a solution in working with conservative politicians in America. Okay, we start to see a little bit of, a path of reaching across the aisle, because they're talking common sense on climate change, gun reform, and things that are affecting the lives of everyday Americans. But until we can get to that point, we have to champion our Democratic candidates. What has the Democratic Party done? Okay, you have the former president. He comes out against the first African American president of the United States of America, as we stated. Okay, here's the Democratic Party. They're working for America. They're putting the best candidate for the job. They're putting him forward, regardless of race. Okay, then you have the next Republican. You have the next candidate come up after Obama, which is the former President Trump. He's running in the Republican Party. Why doesn't he run as a Democrat and say, I'm going to run as a Democrat, and I'm going to be a better Democratic president than former President Obama, since he wants to stick it to him so bad. But he doesn't run as a Democrat because he knows that this is not tolerated in the Democratic Party. He can only get away with misogynistic, racist, bullying, outlandish behavior that he's exhibited in the Republican Party. This is the only party for that kind of nonsense. And now, the best that the Republicans could come up with, because of the hole that they've dug themselves in putting this man in the Oval Office and supporting his candidacy for president of the United States. The best they can come up with now that, they created this monster is to, try to dig dirt on President Biden now. And they're still digging. Where they should be legislating on behalf of the American people and trying to come up with ways to make our lives better, make our work environments better. You may, give us clean air to breathe. Instead of legislating on behalf of the serious issues that we're facing in these serious times, they're digging. They're digging. And when they're asked, do you have the goods? This is a simple yes or no question. This is a matter of fact. Do you have what you need on it? The best they can come up with is I sure hope so. So that tells us they're still digging. It's a yes or no question. And the best answer that Representative Comer has is I sure hope so. That should tell us everything that we need to know. Now, meanwhile, Democrats, can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Can we put legislation forward, bring legislation to the floor for a vote that, we know that we as everyday Americans need to make America better for, women, for example. What do we have, when it comes to pushing back? And we've seen it in Ohio. They push back on women's rights and cast a vote for, for women's rights, and not to take away protections that women have, as far as a right to choose what's best in any medical situation that they're in. So, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and that's what we must continue to do. Legislate, bring common sense legislation to the floor for a vote in the House, and if we get it passed out, it heads to the Senate. But this is what we need to be doing: the business of the American people, and stating the case for it. We don't need, we can prosecute the former president and continue to govern at the same time. As far as, moving America forward into this new 21st century. No answers. There's nothing new. Nothing new. We've seen it all before. We have a mass incarceration problem in the country. But the best that, Republicans can come up with, as far as for solutions for crime is lock them up. And, we're going to break that down. We're going to break down how that looks, from a Democrat point of view. We're going to break down how that looks. And it goes without saying. Well, the Republicans never do say it. The party doesn't consist of men who have enough backbone to say that, when it comes to locking up, they're talking about so-called minorities, Negroes in particular, and other so-called minorities. This is their solution, to get us behind bars. Make sure we have a felony is better than a misdemeanor in their eyes. It takes away your right to vote. You can't own a firearm, and you're pretty much a weak, defenseless, ineffective American, and you're under their control. But this is just straight out saying it here at Soluble, that when it comes to their idea on crime, and locking people up, they're talking about Negroes in particular and other so-called minorities. This is the solution that they have for us. Nothing to try to deter it before we turn to that life of crime. I mean, we as Negroes in America, we're traveling down a road and we come to a crossroad, just like any other American. Whether you can, live a life of being legal, or you want to go down a path of living illegal. We come to that crossroads, and before we get to that crossroads, we're traveling on a path where, the federal government can offer us ideas to deter crime, to prevent crime, from the federal level on down to the state level. Here is a set of ideas, if you will, that we present to each state as a way to prevent crime from happening. Nothing. Not interested. Simply, if they commit crime, lock them up. And we're gonna, as I said, we're gonna break that down for you and show you how that begins to look from a Democratic perspective. And finally put it out there in the open, and so the American people can make an informed decision as to, if we want to be that mass incarceration nation, or if we want to put things out here in society that prevents crime, and deters crime. So, we're in the election season, and from the right, they're desperate. They're desperate. They're desperate. There are no new ideas. It's the same old, same old. And so as Democrats, what are we going to do? What are we going to do if we, care about this country we call America? If we want to move it forward, continue to be the leaders of the free world, moving into the 21st century, where we have nations around the world respecting and revering America because of our democratic system. We're going to have to keep this. We're going to keep the government being controlled by Democrats. We're going to keep it in Democrat hands. We're going to keep it in Democrat hands. Now, we heard Governor Haley, she somewhat let the cat out the bag when it comes to talking about deficits and spending. She gave us a number when it comes to earmarks. How many earmarks that were put out there by Republicans, and how many earmarks were put out by Democrats. Now, for those of you who don't know, we're going to break it down as best we can here at Soluble. An earmark is something that's attached to a major bill or a major piece of legislation that goes back into any one politician, whether it be Democrat and or Republican. It goes back into their district to some of their constituents. They may have a business. It may be something for the community. And it's not to say that it's all bad, but to talk about uncontrolled spending, out of control spending. You heard it from a Republican. We're here at Soluble, we're just repeating what we heard. It was news to us. It was news to us. But you heard it from Governor Haley, Governor Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina, who stated the fact that Republicans are adding, they talk about adding to the deficit, and they're doing more to add to the deficit than Democrats. What more do you need? This is like getting it from the horse's mouth. Because if we here at Soluble had stated something like this, first and foremost, before the debates, or if it never came up at the debates, if we had stated this here at Soluble, then, our listeners, or those out there who are listening, who are, staunch Republicans or on the fence independents who haven't decided could easily say, this is just partisan politics. And this is soluble, just coming up with trying to score partisan political points for the Democrat. But here you have it, folks. A former Republican governor letting you know that, while Republicans out of one side of their mouth are talking about wasteful spending, runaway deficits, they're steady earmarking their way to the top. They're steady earmarking the way to taxpayers' money. And this is what we're up against. But rest assured, as long as you got your mind made up, you're paying attention. Rest assured, former President Trump is the president of the Republican Party. And this is the way we need to keep it. Joseph R. Biden is president of the United States. And we need to do everything in our power, as stated by former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, to keep Donald John Trump out of the Oval Office. And it's not so much as that he's a Republican. As I said, we researched to try to go and look at some of the things that the former president has done for the country that's good. But because of the way he challenged the free and fair elections and tried to overthrow the system with something like a modern day coup, shows that he has a total lack of respect for the democratic system that he's wishing to lead. So it's all the things that he did or didn't do for the country. Well, let's focus on the things that he did that were good for the country. What does it matter to these things that he did that are good for the country when you don't have a country, when you don't have law and order, when chaos rules the day? What good is it? You can't go to the grocery store. You can't go to the movie theater, the doctor's office, the shopping mall without getting shot at. Societal unrest. The teachers don't even want to teach anymore in the schools because of these hardcore partisan politics. These teachers are not indoctrinating children. This is not what it's all about. Don't believe the hype. And what are you getting from the charter school? That's so much more better. What are you getting? They want to cancel the Department of Education. You hear them all say, let's cancel, let's get it out of there. Is that the American way? When something is not, something like the Department of Education is not working up to standard, or if it's not performing up to par, is that the American way to just get rid of it? We've always, came back and came back to the drawing board with a plan B that worked better than plan A. We never just gave up and scrapped something like education. But if that be the case, then let Republicans once again show us the benefit of the charter schools. Show us how the kids are doing so much better on grade level. And this, that, and the third versus, public schools. Show us by comparison. But yet, they want to take a blanket approach and get rid of the Department of Education. There's something sinister going on here, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna research it. We're gonna look into it further. There's definitely something sinister going here. The public schools have always worked. Now, that's not to say that there's no room for improvement. Teacher pay is in the toilet. Teacher pay down here in the great state of Florida is so much on the lower end. Till a lot of times the teachers are saying it's not worth it for the hassle that I'm putting up with, for the aggravation, for the level of patience that I have to display in dealing with these children. The teachers are underfunded. They want to cancel the Department of Education. What does our future look like as a country? Are we educated? Are we mediocrely educated? Or are we overly educated? These charter schools, are we producing more A and B students or A students who are going on to college, and becoming our best and brightest for the future. Show us the proof. Show us the evidence of how we can cancel the Department of Education, do away with it, and then bring about these charter schools, and we're doing so much better. But you have nothing. All you have is empty rhetoric. This is all you have, empty rhetoric. So, we won't see anything any different, as opposition here at Soluble. As the debates go on, we don't, well, right now the former president is the leading contender. So if it's MAGA warmed over, we know what to come out against. We know what to make the case against. And if the former president came on the debate stage and sold us on a new and improved MAGA, gave us something that was new and improved, something that was different, we may have an appetite for it. We may want to taste of it, or dip our feet in and get our feet wet from it. But as of now, all we can gather is that it's the same old, same old. Trickle down economics didn't work. Compassionate conservatism broke us. Main Street had to bail out Wall Street. Drill baby drill is turning climate change on its head. But yet and still, the Republicans are willing to flush America down the toilet, as long as when we get in that whirlpool and we begin to cycle down, we're clutching fistfuls of money in each hand. Then that's not so bad after all. That's not so bad after all. As long as you got money, your health is going down, your quality of life is going down, but yet you got fistfuls of money. This is the Republicans' idea of a great future America. This is what they envision, leading us into. This is what they the idea that they have is the same old, same old. No one wants to raise their hand and even agree that human activity is causing the climate to ramp up, to act more violent towards us as human beings, to become more destructive towards us. They're out of touch. They're out of touch. But what they're in touch with, and that is, as I said, money. That's the bottom line. That's the rule of the day. And then, therefore we become sacrificial lambs. And once we're sacrificed, with cancer in our bodies, being broke down by the environment, this, that, and the third, from the Republicans' point of view, he died or he went broke as a great American. He lost his mental state from stress and anxiety as a great American. So these are the sacrificial lambs that the Republicans expect us to become. And in the meanwhile, we're controlled by millionaires and billionaires. So Democrats, we know what we have to do. It's just a matter of time. And we can only sit back and watch now in horror, and shock as there's no new ideas. There's nothing new here. Even if they wanted to take the former president, the MAGA movement out of the conversation and take it back to a time of compassionate conservatism. We've seen this movie before. We've seen it before. As a working class American, would you rather have, economics that trickle down to you? Think about that, a trickle. It's going to take a long time to quench that thirst. You're going to be sitting there for a while to try and quench that thirst. Well, meanwhile, you can vote Democratic, and the economy is built from the middle class out, from the working class out. And therefore, you get that pitcher full or that glass full a lot faster. than you would with a trickle. And, by most accounts, it hasn't trickled down to the point where, you know, the average working class American can say, see, it worked great for me. It worked great for me. And when it does work great, it's in the short term. It's like a sugar high, a sugar rush. It's short term at the most. But then what do you got on the other end? You know, if you're working in any of the fossil fuel industries, what do you got at the end of the day on that? Your house might be gone. You know, your house might not even be insured. You might lose, regrettably, lose a family member during the course of a storm. Lose property that's been in your family for years and years and years. So, we have to get ready to vote them out again. It's plain and simple. They won't put forth any legislation that makes sense for the American people and for America itself. Right now, we should have pieces of legislation coming out on a regular basis from this Republican majority. But, they can't even, the thing that they want to specialize in, which is investigating crooked Democratic politicians on behalf of the American people. They can't even get that right. Where's the conviction? Where's the case that goes to court? And so, while we suffer, while we, await the next big storm or the weather disaster or God forbid, mass shooting, the Republicans are investigating. And, the threat to national security, we don't see it. We don't know what it is. But they want us to be convinced that they're investigating on behalf of the American people. And they're looking into something that's a serious threat to Americans and their way of life. And, to give them that small glimmer, small benefit of the doubt, we sit here waiting. We feel like it's going to come to nothing, but yet we still sit here waiting. Meanwhile, we need a solution here, and the solution, from our point of view here at Soluble, is common sense Democrats and a Republican, if you can find them, who is ready to bring forth, bills, legislation that makes the lives of everyday American people better, that helps them, with protection, with security, which is what we should be, afforded as American citizens, our just due. But taxpayer money is being wasted here, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's just a waste of taxpayers' dollars. That money can go a long way in solving other problems. And the solution there to stop this wasteful taxpayer spending on these fruitless investigations is to vote in Democratic politicians, or make the case where Republicans should vote out politicians who are not willing to come to Washington and work on behalf of the American people. It's buffoonery all the day long. As I said, former Governor Nikki Haley of South Carolina, she just told you. And this is coming from a Republican. The Republicans talk about adding to the deficit and runaway spending, and they're adding more to the deficit than Democrats. But they think you're stupid. They think you're dumb. But we're going to do everything in our power to dispel that notion and create this blue wave, and get prepared for 2024 and be ready to rock the vote, for the good of the country, for the good of the country. And we're 247 years in, and we're at a still serious inflection point. We've stalled out. Republicans want to say that, it's both sides, but we don't see it with the Democrats. We see them trying to legislate. We see them trying to sit down every day at their job, roll up their sleeves, and get to work on behalf of the American people. Republicans say that it's both sides, it's both parties. Well, show us the proof. Show us where it's at, coming from Democratic circles, so we can address it as Democratic voters. But you have nothing here. You have nothing more here than Republican politicians who are in a Democratic House pointing out uncleanliness when they have so much filth in their own house. And we're going to expose it here at Soluble. Stay tuned, and we just have to keep paying attention and be ready. Nothing more, nothing less. Because the only thing that can, move America forward, and it has always ruled America forward, is we the people. Now, there's always been, in closing, there's always been a time where in America, there was a check on so-called minority power, Negroes in particular. Anytime that, racist Caucasian Americans felt like, Negroes in America, was accumulating power or becoming more powerful in the country, they always wanted to check that and push back on that. And so that's what happened after former President Obama. Former President Trump was racist America's solution. And as stated, it's embarrassing. It does no good for the country when Republican voters and or politicians want to bring forth the most racist, the most flawed, the most ill-informed. And so that's why the country is where it's at now. At this serious reflection point. With a party that has no answers, the only thing they can do is point fingers. But they can't say, we're going to point the finger at the Democrats, but at the same time, after we point the finger there, we want you to look over here to the right and see what plan we have for the American people. But we've seen it all before, based on what was said at the debates. And so we look forward to exposing, informing, and getting America's voters ready for the next election, because everything rides on it once again, because the former president Donald John Trump still looms large in Republican circles, and by all accounts, he's the leader of the Republican Party. So voter beware, voter be alert, and let's get ready. We thank you for joining us tonight here at Soluble. We look forward to being very active on our podcast, coming into the election season, to keep you informed. Our goal, as always, is to solve the political climate, to make it better, because there was a time where politicians did work across the aisle, but now there's this wide gulf. And we have the Republican Party becoming the party of no, and don't want to cooperate none whatsoever. And so, we want to know why. And if they're going to be the party of no, what are you going to say yes to? Because we don't remain the leader of the free world. We don't remain the most powerful nation on the earth, being governed by a party of no. That party has to have some yes involved with legislation. Everything can't be no, no, no. There's just no way that a majority can rule in that way, because we're too diverse of a country. And as I said before, if the country is truly right of center, like you have heard Republican politicians state in the past, then let the vote be held. Don't try to block it. Don't attempt to, cut people off from voting, making it harder to vote. Let the vote happen, free and fair. Let it happen. Let it spill over to all corners of the nation, and let people vote, and let's see, where actually the country is at. Because our position here at Soluble is if we feel strongly that America is left of center, then we have no problem with saying, okay, let's vote and see. But it seems that our Republican colleagues have a problem with that, with free and fair elections. So stay tuned. There will surely be more to come in the coming days and weeks as we break down all the talking points, all the debate highs, the debate lows, coming from Republicans and or Democrats going into the 2024 election season. So until the next time that we speak again, this is Soluble signing off. Good night. God bless. And we thank you for joining us. Good night.